Welcome back to EarthX 2026. My name is Paul Salpin, and today we have a really special conversation for you. A fireside chat without a fireplace. Maybe they'll add one in later. And we are so honored to be here with Ashleigh K. Myers from Pillsbury. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
Wonderful. Well, we're so excited to talk to you about this because the intersection of environmental and AI legal is there's a lot going on here. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing here and what we need to know.
Yeah, so I'm a partner at the international law firm of Pillsbury Winthrop Shaw Pittman. We go by Pillsbury, but it's confusing for people who aren't familiar with big law firms in the United States. I am in our Austin office, but I have a practice, an international practice in environmental law with a particular focus on water issues. So everything from water quality, water rights, water supply planning. And increasingly, I'm seeing that come up in the context of AI and data centers and data center development. And so that is a big focus of my work these days because, as I'm sure we'll get into momentarily, the regulatory infrastructure that supports development of data centers hasn't really, kept up with where we are in implementing infrastructure. So there's lots of interesting legal innovation and evolution happening simultaneous with the proliferation of AI data centers.
And it's changing every single day.
Daily.
And of course, we've got some brilliant, beautiful minds here at EarthX and so many great people to connect with. Who are you hoping to connect with here?
Oh gosh, I've connected with so many people already. This is day 3 of the conference, and
Yes.
it's just been full of, meeting great people, having these moments of just, small world connections of someone who knows someone, and it's been just really fascinating to get to know people from across the world, different walks of life, people who are students, like in the audience today, but then also, people who've been thinking about the Earth since the first Earth Day
Hmm.
back in the 70s.
Yeah. Well, you absolutely have a gift in what you do, and I could tell the moment that I met you. And when did you first realize that you had the passion for what you do?
Oh, the passion for what I do. It's a daily discovery. I
Hmm.
mean, I am a lifelong learner, and I always thought I'd be a chronic student in my lifetime. But I fell into a career path that allows me to learn every single day. And so it just reignites the passion that I have every single day. I make a joke when I talk to people that I get to work with every kind of ologist. So, I mean, I'm a lawyer and I have a legal education, but I also have a degree in environmental science. And getting to chat with everything from chemists, hydrologists, hydrogeologists, geochemists, this is my daily life. And I've spent hours on phone calls with consultants and clients and going to their facilities and just getting to learn their processes and the things that matter to them, and it just helps me do my job better every single day. So it's a constant renewal of that passion.
Yeah. Well, we've got some students here today, and I know that they look up to you and they think, see, that's what I want to do. And of course, you make it look easy. That's your job. But what kind of advice would you give the students or the people watching at home that want to follow down the path? Because we need more people like you.
Yeah, I would say be open to new experiences. Keep your mind open to different career paths that this can take you down. If you're considering law in particular, there's so much that you can learn and do. It's not just like what you see on TV. In fact, it's nothing like what you see on TV. My day, sometimes I'm wearing boots and waders and out in the environment and in nature, getting to work on matters that are just massively important.
So, what do you have to share with us today?
Yeah, so today I want to talk about how we're seeing technological advances in AI and data center growth, how that's evolving with the legal frameworks that underpin um, the growth of data centers. And I want to focus particularly on water. It is, our most precious resource that we have, and we live in a world where it's increasingly commoditized. And so figuring out a way to allow the backbone of the future of our technological advancements, which is AI, be supported by our ecosystems rather than it being a drain on our most finite resources, and how we're seeing that play out in the legal sphere today, at least in the United States.
Yeah. So, can AI actually enforce environmental law or just analyze it?
Did you say enforce
Yeah.
environmental law? I wouldn't say enforce environmental law, but I think it forces an issue
Yeah.
of how do we deal with competing frameworks, regulatory and policy frameworks, to make the growth of data centers productive and not a drain on resources. So it is forcing those conversations and really opening an opportunity for some innovation in how we think about water resources, water regulation, and making sure that resources are where they're most needed.
Mm. So, what is the biggest risk of AI in environmental decision making?
Oh, the biggest risk. That's a hard one. For me, I come at this from a water background. I cut my teeth as a lawyer practicing just in the water space, which has expanded over time to include, like hazardous waste management, site remediation, contamination cleanup kind of factors for my clients. Um, but from just a pure resource use perspective, there's a lot of conversation these days about energy use and how we're going to have enough energy to promote the growth of data centers and the proliferation of AI. And I think what we're starting to hear more about now is what I'm more concerned about, and that's water. So I do have a couple slides I'll show
Yes.
you. So a lot of the data centers, they're being sited across the country, and one thing that stands out is where they're being concentrated. A lot of new data centers in places like Texas, Arizona, Nevada, where you see higher concentration of development. Those are also areas where water stress is very front of mind, very realistic, something that the locals are very much dealing with on a daily basis. And so what I'm dealing with in my job is, okay, if we're going to site these projects in places like Texas who have favorable land use, zoning laws, tax incentives, our independent regulatory grid, how do we do that in a way that doesn't put further stress and impact our limited water resources?
Right. Absolutely. And what do you think AI will make corporations more accountable, or do you think it's have to be more loopholes?
It's something that we're dealing with right now. It's an interesting conversation. So I'm going to skip ahead
Yes, please
quite a
do.
bit. It's what I want to talk about is over here towards the end. What we're seeing now is there are two things I want to talk about. So first is data center developers are increasingly looking at creative siting options. So not just like co-locating with existing energy infrastructure, but also things like redeveloping brownfield sites. So we're talking sites with historic contamination, heavy industrial use. You can't, build an apartment complex on these properties because of the contamination that exists. So we're seeing more and more data centers being built on sites like this. I have one project I'm working on, for example, where a data center is being sited adjacent to an actual Superfund site, and there is ongoing manufacturing at the site still, but there's also ongoing site remediation from historic contamination from literally decades of pollution. And so for this data center project, what we're doing is negotiating these novel agreements so that not only are we using this unproductive land that's contaminated, but the data center is using the water from the process, so process wastewater, so what we would consider trash water that has to be treated before it can be put down the sewer, plus groundwater that's being remediated as part of the Superfund site. So those are the water sources that are being used for the cooling towers for the data center, rather than further drawing down the aquifer over which this property sits. In that region, it's a very heavily agricultural region. So, of course, the locals are concerned that their livelihoods will be impacted if you have a massive data center coming in and consuming more water than the aquifer can support. This is the workaround, right? We're using trash water, essentially, to power the data center. So in that way, you see these sustainability goals start to work their way into these bigger pictures about developing in the first instance. Now, we're also seeing a lot of the major data center developers make what are called water positive commitments. Think of it like net zero or like biodiversity commitments, where companies are committing to offset all of the water that they consume by either developing new sources or taking other measures to just offset that impact. And these commitments, most of them are set for a target of 2030. So, just a few years from now.
Yes.
And what my clients are doing is, they're investing in this portfolio of water projects in order to effectuate their water positive commitments. That can be anything from watershed restoration to buying and protecting water rights so that they stay in stream and they're not being used for consumptive uses. They're developing wetlands. They're helping communities implement water efficiency and infrastructure at the local level, so even just beyond the facilities themselves. Now, what I have to caution my clients as a lawyer, my job is to be anxious for them and to think of all the possible things that could go wrong. And so, of course, what we're concerned about is greenwashing. So I'm sure you've heard in the news, in various contexts, companies who are greenwashing their sustainability commitments and their goals. We're seeing that in the water space too. So developers who are making these commitments, the things that they need to be focused on and concerned about is how are we reporting our metrics? Is it in our sustainability report, our investor materials, or in our public communications? How are we actually quantifying the benefits that are being generated from each of these water stewardship projects that they're implementing in order to reach their water positive goals by 2030? And then how is that communicated? Is it consistent? Is it reliable? Is it objective data? These are the kinds of things that I'm helping clients think through so that they can avoid potential liabilities associated with something that they're doing that is just, they're trying to be leaders in sustainability, and we don't want it to backfire.
Well, I know you've got a few more points that we need to get through here as well, because, gosh, there's so much to learn from you today.
Yeah, there's one other point that I wanted to make that I think it's important when we're talking about water, especially in the United States. So, uh, where a project is sited is going to have massive impacts on how you're going to get water.
Mhm.
So in the United States, we have different regulatory regimes depending on where you are, and it's regional. So in the eastern United States, we're talking a system of what's called riparian rights. So your access to water depends on land ownership, and your use is based on a reasonableness standard. It's completely different in the western part of the United States, and this is, including Texas, where you have a system of prior appropriation. So first in time, first in right. If you were using this water first, you get to claim it first. But that also means when you're in times of drought, which in the Western United States is a very, very much a reality, those rights can be curtailed. So then you have questions of reliability, supply constraints, and like who has priority during times of drought, which, as climate change progresses, we're going to experience at more extreme levels. So you can have the same data center project that's being replicated across the country, but access to water will very much depend on which regulatory system you're seated in. And I don't think that developers really appreciate how complicated that can be, because it's not just something that you can scale and roll out across the country when you have this patchwork of regulation that hasn't quite evolved to match up with where they are in their development goals.
Well, it is Earth Day, so we got to talk about what it is exactly that we can do better. What can companies do better when they're, from a legal standpoint?
Yeah, I'm excited to say I'm seeing companies do more of this as we're having our conversations, but water's no longer an afterthought. It is part of their initial planning, their CapEx, their OpEx planning from the beginning before they even get the data center up off the ground. It's no longer just about finding a piece of land, finding the best tax incentives. It's also, resource constraint. And they realize that water is going to be an increasing constraint on the ability to develop. So what I'm excited to see, and what I hope I see more of, is this creativity that we're experiencing and using, alternative sources of water, not withdrawing freshwater sources. So being creative in how we use the resources that we already have without making a negative impact.
Yeah. Well, you have an incredible passion for this, and I just got to know, an incredible success mindset. What do you keep in mind that keeps you on the right path? What's your North Star in all this?
Well, I'm from a small town in Texas, from an agricultural community. I, just acutely appreciate how complex the water story is, especially in places like Texas. And so, my North Star is I have companies who want to do great things and advance technologically in really interesting ways, but they want to do it responsibly. And so it is my duty, both as a fiduciary, as a lawyer to my clients, but also to the earth, to make sure that we're being creative, that we're being innovative, and that where it takes breaking down regulatory systems, that we're prepared for that fight.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, thank you so much for being with us today,
Thank you
and
for having me.
tell people how they can find you.
You can find me online, Ashleigh K. Myers. That's Ashley with a couple of extra letters, so ASHLEIGH. Myers, MYERS. I'm at ashley.myers@pillsburylaw.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram as well.
Wonderful. Well, it's been an honor to talk to you. Thank you for doing what you do, and stay tuned because we have more at EarthX 2026 next.